A grainy daguerreotype housed in the archives of a forgotten Virginia courthouse shows something that should not be real. The date scratched faintly in the corner, June 17, 1862. A young girl named Clara Hensley had been photographed in her family parlor only one day prior. A bright, delicate child of 12, her skin smooth, her eyes alight with youth. Yet in the courthouse daguerreotype, taken just 24 hours later, Clara appears as an emaciated woman in her 40s, hair streaked with white, face sunken and hollow, eyes vacant. No illness had been diagnosed. No fever recorded. Witnesses swore they saw her change overnight, and when military doctors arrived, men already hardened by the Civil War's horrors, several refused to enter her room. It wasn't natural. One surgeon later whispered before taking his own life in 1870. This was no simple tragedy. It was an eruption of something ancient hidden within the soil of Virginia, a secret no medical explanation could contain. The Hensleys were not wealthy but respected, farmers who had kept their land even as war gnawed away at the countryside. Clara was their only daughter, cherished and protected. Yet in the weeks leading up to June 1862, neighbors had noted unsettling sounds from their farmhouse at night. Low mutterings, voices not belonging to the family. Clara herself began speaking in fragmented phrases she claimed were not hers. "She is older than me," she whispered to a childhood friend. "She says I was never born." Her mother, Mary Hensley, confided in the local minister, who advised prayer and fasting. But when Clara's hair began to thin in clumps and lines etched across her skin, prayer turned to silence. By the time the family sought help, their daughter had already become a stranger. Because the Civil War had brought soldiers into nearly every Virginia town, Clara's case fell to Dr. Edmund Wycliffe, a Union physician stationed nearby. Wycliffe's notes, what remain of them, read less like a medical journal and more like the frantic ramblings of a man wrestling with something unnatural. "She is accelerated." One entry begins, "Time runs differently in her marrow. I hear it when I touch her wrist, like a second heartbeat beneath the skin. Something ancient has gripped her." His last surviving page describes Clara weeping at her reflection. "She begged me to kill her," he wrote, before the rest of her years arrived all at once. Local lore provides a chilling context. Long before the Civil War, the land beneath the Hensley farm was rumored cursed. A Powhatan burial ground, desecrated during colonial expansion, where settlers unearthed bones they did not rebury. Elders warned that time itself could be weaponized upon those who trespassed. Some whispered the land held the debt of years on an ancient punishment in which youth could be stripped away in an instant, forcing the victim to live out their decades in a single night. The Hensleys dismissed such tales. Until Clara aged 30 years before their eyes, the town minister, Reverend Samuel Carter, kept his own record of Clara's transformation. In passages locked away until discovered in 1938, he describes visiting the farmhouse after her change. "The smell of age was in the air," he wrote, "as if centuries had been confined to one small room. Clara looked at me with eyes both ancient and newborn. Her voice cracked like an old woman's, yet inside it, a child still cried." Carter noted that Clara begged not to be touched. "She said the years would spread like fire, that my hand would turn black if I reached for her." He never returned, and in later sermons, he never spoke her name again. By July of 1862, Clara's case had reached Confederate and Union records alike. But both governments suppressed it. The Confederacy feared morale would shatter. The Union feared soldiers would see God's curse in their war. Dr. Wycliffe was ordered to cease documentation, and Clara was quietly confined to a shuttered orphanage in Staunton, Virginia, though she was no orphan. Her parents were forbidden visitation. Her case was classified as extreme hysteria, though her body was visibly decades older than her age. The medical community erased her from textbooks, yet in whispered circles, her name lived on. The Staunton orphanage where Clara was sent already bore a sinister reputation. Children had vanished, records had gaps of entire years, and beneath the stone floors, tunnels led into caverns used during earlier Indian wars. Clara lasted there less than a month. Survivors of the orphanage fire of August 1862 claimed it was she who set it ablaze. Though she was bedridden, they said her skin cracked open like paper, and when her breath rattled, sparks fell from her lips. 38 children perished in that fire. Clara's body was never recovered. An official inquiry was convened to investigate the fire, but within weeks all transcripts disappeared. The presiding judge was found dead in his chambers, lips sewn shut with twine. Whispers in Staunton claimed Clara had been seen walking in the woods the night after the fire, her hair entirely white, her hands blackened, dragging time itself like a heavy veil. The Hensley family never spoke publicly again. By 1865, both parents were dead, though neither had been sick. Their home rotted into ruin, overtaken by weeds until no trace remained. In 1921, a farmer plowing near the ruins unearthed a small metal box. Inside was a page, written in a trembling hand. The words are almost unreadable, but one line pierces through. They gave me her years. I was never meant to live them. The handwriting matched neither Clara's parents nor Reverend Carter. Experts argued it belonged to Clara herself, though by then she should have been long dead. Letters between Civil War surgeons, uncovered in the 1970s, reveal that Clara's case was discussed in secret. One physician warned colleagues, if word spreads, every soldier will believe the war itself is cursed. Keep the child silent, tell her family nothing. Science cannot hold her and faith cannot explain her. She is proof of something older than both. After these letters, all surviving references to Clara in military archives were blacked out. One clue ties Clara's fate to the Union Theological Seminary in Virginia. Hidden ledgers reveal that during 1862, the seminary received an anonymous living donation. Recorded only as the accelerated girl, students whispered that professors dissected her in secret, yet official rolls list no such event. What they do show is that 3 professors resigned abruptly that year, leaving notes that simply read, "It has begun." Children who survived the orphanage fire later grew into adults plagued with strange afflictions. One aged at twice the normal rate. Another remained eerily youthful until she died at 89, looking no older than 40. They all repeated the same phrase almost ritualistically, "She took our time, she gave it back wrong." The most disturbing report comes from 1889 when a photograph surfaced in Richmond. It depicts a woman of about 40 standing among a crowd at a public execution. Witnesses swore she was Clara, unchanged from her last known appearance in 1862. If true, Clara should have been 39 years old. The woman in the photo looked 70, yet in her eyes, still unmistakably, the same haunted child. In the Virginia State Lunatic Asylum, a record from 1892 lists an unnamed female inmate described as aged and childlike simultaneously. Her fingerprint, rarely kept at the time, matched those of Clara's daguerreotype. Staff described her as muttering constantly about the trade and the debt. She spoke of children buried beneath the orphanage and claimed they had been sacrificed not by her, but by those who prayed for youth eternal. Despite mounting whispers, the church refused acknowledgement. When pressed, bishops claimed the story of Clara was a fabrication, yet internal memos suggest otherwise. One letter, marked confidential, states, "If her existence becomes public, faith collapses. Bury her deeper, let time claim her as it was always meant to." In 1903, construction crews near Staunton unearthed an unmarked grave. Inside lay the skeleton of a child, yet the skull bore the bone density of a middle-aged woman. The remains were quietly removed by university researchers. No report was ever published. The bones themselves vanished. Generations of Staunton residents passed down warnings never to build near the Hensley land. Families whispered that Clara still walked there, neither child nor elder, her body folding centuries into hours. One tale describes a woman seen in the 1930s knocking on farmhouse doors asking to borrow a year. Those who claimed to encounter her died within months, faces aged beyond recognition. In 1951, a photograph surfaced in a Richmond newspaper office, a young girl standing beside an old woman. Both faces were unmistakably the same, Clara's. The paper never published the photo. Days later, the negative was destroyed in a fire that gutted the entire archive. No cause of the fire was ever found. Across centuries, legends persist of those who age overnight. Not disease, but debt. The land beneath the Hensley home carries a memory of trespass. Some debts are paid not in blood, but in time stolen. Clara may have been the first victim documented, but perhaps not the last. And if youth can be stripped, it can also be hoarded, which means somewhere, someone was given the years Clara lost. Today, Clara's story exists only in fragments, half-burned records, whispered recollections, and one impossible daguerreotype. Science could not explain it. Faith would not touch it. History tried to erase it. But her face remains, caught forever between child and elder, innocence and decay. A reminder that beneath America's wars and progress lies a deeper battlefield, one where time itself is bartered, stolen, and consumed. And if you look closely enough, even now you may find her, not aged, not young, but something that should never have been allowed to exist.